To see you, Seymour. I'm looking forward to this. Thanks, Eric.
Pleasure
Yeah,
is
thank
all
you.
mine.
Yeah, and everyone at Net Capital has just been fantastic with this, but as always with the whole business. I don't know about you, Brad, but we would never go to another platform. I think that these guys are just the kings of the landscape, you know.
Absolutely. Easy to work with, very professional. And besides, we've hit the success that we wanted to. Why
Yeah,
switch?
exactly. Exactly. Hmm.
So kind. I really appreciate it so much. And I just appreciate you guys giving the opportunity for everyday folks to invest in these deals. So I see custom live streaming is up on my end. I think it looks great. Philip, if you see any technical things on your side, please let me know. But as far as I can tell, we're recording and it'll be up on YouTube soon. We're live streaming to the custom websites. So I think we're all ready to go. So let's dig in here. I'm so excited. As I mentioned, I'm Eric Cox. I'm a member of the Net Capital team. As always, run the line with folks who are actively raising capital through the Net Capital platform. I'm going to let them share a little bit about what they're building, but go ahead and add a couple of links into the chat here. You can go directly to netcapital.com and search for MAGFAST and Avadain. You'll be able to see their offering pages, review their materials, and if you are so inclined, you can push button invest directly through the website there. So I'm going to add those links directly into the chat now. We do still want to keep this interactive, so we still do have that Q&A feature built into Zoom. Please do ask your questions. We're here for you. But as I add these links in here, I think we're going to go ahead and kickstart off with just a couple of minutes introduction to each company. Seymour, do you mind starting us off and giving us a couple of minutes about what you're building here with MagFast?
Yeah, sure. How many minutes do you want? Two, three, five? I can do 60 to 90 is easiest for me, but you want less? Shorter?
We have five. Yeah, I guess we'll stick with five. 60 was tempting. Let's go with five.
Uh, One of the questions I think people often say is like, "What's the moment you knew you had to do this?" And it was kind of a decade ago, just working on the problem of cleaning up my own home. My wife and I were doing a kind of Marie Kondo operation, where you kind of like try to get everything clean and efficient and so on. And we were trying to do it for charging, and it was just a mess and wires everywhere, and we didn't love any of the products that were out there. So that was where it originally came from. And this company hasn't been around for 10 years, but we've been around for eight, and made a lot of progress and a lot of mistakes in that time. But the mission has always been the same. It's to create a delightful charging experience. It's only a little part of your life, but it's kind of an important one these days, isn't it? Like we all carry these devices around with us the whole time. Some people go into kind of withdrawal, as some sort of psychosis if they can't use their phone. So the devices are extremely important, but charging has typically been, broken chargers and broken cables. It just hasn't been very delightful. And we came up with this idea that the combination of wireless and magnetic was going to be amazing. And that was our original idea. The first generation of products, those who've been following us for a while know that we had a multitude of challenges with that. Like COVID was the least of our challenges. We had just real problems with those. But we learned a great deal. We did wind up shipping. We've now shipped, I forget what the number is, but kind of, well over 100,000 units of different products. And about a year ago, we announced, okay, we need to re-up and move to the second generation of products. And that's what we're working on now. It's going so much better and so much smoother. I'm super proud of the products, but more than that, I think I'm proud of the team, which is essentially at its core the same team that we've had the whole time. One or two people have come and gone. I think everybody who's gone remains a member of our extended family, and I'm really proud of that, because I think if people love to work, they love to come to work, they're going to do their best work, and they're going to remain loyal when things get tough. So that's it. So we're making consumer charging products, with a vision that extends way beyond that, because we think that speed is going to be increasingly important. I mean, speed always wins, doesn't it? For decades of automotive, faster is better. So we have a couple of different speed technologies that we're incorporating into our products. One is a licensing agreement that's to do with much more efficient battery charging. It's actually the technology of just getting the power into and out of batteries is surprisingly complicated. And we have we're working closely with a company called Iontra on a technology to do that with power banks. And we also have our own technology that we've kind of hinted at in past presentations, and I'm only going to hint at again today. But essentially today, there's two ways of charging your device. One is using a wireless charger. Oh, here's a particularly beautiful one right here. It happens to be the one that we just launched to our investors recently. And so you can either charge wirelessly like that, or with a wire. And I seem to also have a particularly gorgeous looking cable here. This is our Lux Pro cable. And so these are the two ways that are supported, and we can support both of those. We're working on something that, in a way that's hard to describe until we formally announce it, but it actually provides the convenience of one with all of the speed and technology of the other. So we're super excited about that. We'll be unfolding that and talking more about it in the, I wouldn't say the weeks or months ahead, but in the quarters ahead. It's going fantastically in the lab. Right now, we're focused on the launch. I'll wrap up in the next 30 seconds. We're focused on the launch of this little guy. I showed it to you briefly just now. It's called Lux Pro, and it looks like the algorithm doesn't want to show it either. Yeah, so this little guy is called Lux Pro, most powerful of its kind in the industry. You can charge up to 3 devices simultaneously. The thing's absolutely gorgeous, as I think you can see. And we call it a heavyweight. Did you hear the charging just start there? A heavyweight in 3 ways. One is in power. This is the most powerful charging stand. There are lots of competitors. You've seen things like this around the place that have something like a third or a quarter of the power. So we're the heavyweight in power. We think we're the heavyweight in design. We just think it's designed to be much more beautiful than pretty much anything else out there. And we're also heavyweight in weight. There's a demo we do. We don't have quite time for it right now, but this thing weighs way more than any of the competitors. And the reason is, let me do the real quick demo. Here's the heaviest of the competitors. When I take my phone off, do you see how it wants to come with and it lifts up in the air? And many products in life, you want them to be light. But there are some products you want them to be heavy, and this is one of them. So ours is nice and heavy, and you just lift it off. So we're really, really proud of it. And investors seem to be crazy for it because we actually we're doing this as a perk in the current investment round. So if folks invest $1,000, they get one of these, a limited edition investors one included. But folks invest 2,000 are going to get 2 of these along with this separate data hub. And people seem to really be wanting to do that, and we've got a lot of investors choosing to be at that level. Anyway, I'm sure I've overrun my time, but it's only because of my great excitement and enthusiasm for what we're doing.
And I
Over to
think
you,
that's
Brad.
conveyed.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love to see is how passionate you folks are. For people that don't get to engage with you daily, like I get the pleasure to, they don't get to see this behind the scenes experience of how incredibly enthusiastic you folks are. So, and with that transition, Brad, love to please tell us a little bit about what you're building here with Avadain.
Sure, great, thanks. And I just fair warning to everybody, I will never keep up with Seymour, okay? I always get so inspired every time that I see him, and I could just listen all day long. So thanks, Seymour, for that. Mine is much more boring. I've been a technology investor and I've been involved in commercialization of technologies for the last 15 or 20 years. And one of the ones that we invested in was created by the Fraunhofer Institute for Applied Solid-State Physics in Germany. And they had this idea that graphene was going to be the next big material revolution. And while lots and lots of people were creating all kinds of materials that they called graphene, these young researchers who were really so brilliant at Fraunhofer felt that the properties that needed to be in graphene to make it really special weren't capable of being made with the other methods. So they asked for some funding. We provided it. In 2020, they proved that they could do what they said they would to create these large, thin, and defect-free graphene flakes. And so I looked at our existing business. I looked at the opportunity here, and we decided to put our existing business on hold and go all in for this company, Avadain. Because what Avadain has is the only known technology to create the type of graphene as an additive material to enhance thousands of products to make them lighter, stronger, more conductive, and more durable. Why is that? Because graphene is actually the lightest, strongest, and most thermally and electrically conductive material ever discovered. It's very few atomic layers of carbon in a six-sided format, hexagonal carbon. And once you're able to isolate this material and then scale it, which we'll talk about later, you then have a material that can change all of manufacturing. We talk about things like the iron age, the steel age, the silicon age, the plastics age. And so right now, I think what we are in with Avadain is the graphene age. So Eric, I'll throw it back to you with that.
No, and that's actually probably one of the next favorite parts of getting to work with folks like you is learning about new industries. And for those who have not taken a peek behind the hood of what graphene can do in terms of strength and conductivity, I hope this is a kind of the intro to graphene and you get to understand how exciting the opportunities are there. We got to kick things off again. We're talking about the team here. This is the founding story. You folks are the reason why everybody's excited to invest in these deals through Net Capital. So I think we're just go with kind of reverse order here. Brad, can you tell us, and you alluded to it a little bit, I think, what was the moment where you said, I have to start this company? What was it? Was it a specific event or, realization, certain frustrations in the market? When was it that I need to do this?
It was in the 2019 and the 2020 era, that period of time, pre-COVID, um, when when Fraunhofer finished their work and they proved that they could make this very most superior form of graphene. And I sat around with my partners and we talked about it. And lots of technologies are pushed in our direction. Everyone's gone through this where they say, oh, this is going to change the world. This is like the best thing since sliced bread and yada, 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 billion-dollar opportunity and so forth. But when you come right down to it, the fundamentals generally aren't there. And we had that kind of aha moment when we were in Germany and they showed us what this could do. They put an obelisk. They asked us to hold an obelisk and put it in ice. And instantly it was as cold as the ice because it was coated with one single atomic layer of graphene. And so it was just a phenomenal thing. And we that I think was the turning point for us when we began to see this vision of what we could do. That's why we founded Avadain together with our partner Panasonic. And that I think that was the moment that really was pivotal for us. Seymour?
I can imagine you
Sorry.
in the lab experiencing that. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall. Yes, please, Seymour. Same question to you. When was the
Well,
moment you said,
I mentioned earlier, my
yeah,
wife and I were sort of we're going to, just trying to do this, get this one bit of our lives organized, and it proved so difficult. But the thing that kind of that renews my enthusiasm for doing this the whole time is I think I mentioned in the intro earlier on this word delightful, because it's this incredible kind of driving force as we work. And I mean, if you haven't gathered already, Brad and I are doing very different things. We're creating things for customers to hold in, customers to use in their lives, right? Brad is creating an unbelievable technology so that we and all kinds of other people can make better products for use in all walks of life. I mean, really, truly, in all walks of life. And if you're a MAGFAST investor and you're here, thank you for joining us. Braden is not of the real deal. You should, really take, don't invest a penny you can't afford to lose, but really take a close look at what they're doing because it's extraordinary. And the thing that renews me all of the time is as I said, we've had challenges, but when we get what we do right, the enthusiasm, passion that it generates in our customers is truly extraordinary. So that might not be the thing that got me started, but this sort of relentless focus on just making kind of every touch delightful, I find incredibly energizing. And we were, earlier today, two things. We were looking at two of the leaflets that I don't have one here, but the leaflets that came in the box with two products, and one of them hadn't had quite enough time spent on it. And it kind of looked the same size, printed on the same paper kind of thing, but it just didn't sing. So one of them was like truly delightful, and someone opening the box would have been just like, wow. And the other one was like, okay, whatever, I'll throw it to one side. And I think that most companies, most consumer companies, they never understand the importance of that little something extra. So we're working kind of relentlessly on that. We had a very important meeting, it was actually earlier today, to talk about AI, which is a train that it's not going to stop. Right? You could say, oh, no, whenever. You have to look at AI. You have to understand AI. You have to have a strategy for AI. And what I've said to the team is it has to make us more delightful for our customers.
Yeah.
That's what the experience has to be. It
That's
has to be more
amazing.
delightful. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I think Seymour, you've done a great job of sharing some of the difficulties. And entrepreneurship is always an incredibly difficult journey. Fundraising is incredibly difficult. Really building incredibly delightful products is incredibly difficult. But I want to give Brad, I want to give you an opportunity for you to share, what were some of the things that you had to overcome? What was the hardest part about taking the leap into building Avadain for you?
Well, it's sort of like a continuum. You go from one challenge to the next challenge, and looking back on it, it all sort of blurs together. But I'm sure Seymour knows exactly what I'm
Oh,
talking about.
yes. Yeah.
Well, one of the ones for me is we made the decision not to build a $10 million lab and hire 20 PhDs and do all of that. We've outsourced all of the technology development first to Fraunhofer in Germany, and then once they finished their task of proving it could be done in the lab, then to Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio. They're the largest applied research institute in the U.S. And so we tasked them to go do this development work. And of course, we're intimately involved, but they have the plant, they have the people, they have the interdisciplinary skills and everything else. But one of the things is we're not exactly always aligned on priorities because they're researchers and we're business people. And so when we come up with a schedule, we like to stick with it. When they come up with a schedule, they put it in their drawer, and at some time in the future, they might look at it again, but it really doesn't drive them day to day because they're focused on their research. And when we would have these every other week meetings, it would just drive me bananas when they would say, I'd say, how did you do on that task? And they go, it was great because when we started it, we found these other things and they were
Yeah.
fascinating. And we did this and this and this. And I said, yes, but where are we on the task? And they said, well, we haven't really moved forward since the last time. And I'm like, guys, we've got to get this done. We've just got to finish this. So for us, one of the biggest parts of the challenge is when you hire really bright people and really creative scientific people, it's keeping them motivated, happy, but focused. So for me, I would say that has been the biggest challenge.
I can only imagine when you have folks that come from that truly intellectual pursuit standpoint. Sometimes, almost it's the ability to attain the knowledge is almost as much as important as commercializing the product, and then having to rein that in. That does sound like a unique challenge. So I'm glad that you shared about it, and kind of piggybacking off of that, Seymour. You had mentioned your personal passion and some of the things that really drive you in terms of trying to find that excellence, the really high standard of excellence. And I feel like that also must be a pretty big challenge, making sure that everybody's reaching for that same incredibly high
Yeah, I
level
mean,
of
it's certainly, I
excellence.
think one of the greatest challenges going forward is as we grow, how do we create an organization that is committed to because the kind of the problem with delightful is it's very is it, you feel it instantly, right? I mean just the three of us in the room and hundreds, maybe thousands of people watching. Like you buy a product, when it, oh, this is amazing. and you know that you don't get that experience most of the time, but actually trying to kind of ship delightful it's quite tricky. And Philip, who's behind the scenes helping us with this presentation, as he does all of them, who's our lead designer. We worked together for a decade now, over a decade. And he and I will sit there and we're like, what is it? And it's like, you know what? I think if we change this curve, from 2.5 millimeter radius to 3 millimeter radius, I think and then and it's like, oh, that's it. And it's fine when it's kind of just us, but scaling that feeling is definitely going to be one of our challenges for the future. And we were actually discussing the other day, could we just talk to an AI for kind of hours and hours and hours about what we think about everything and have it kind of summarize it? And this is sort of, I'm say it joking, but I'm kind of not really, because there needs to be some way of efficiently encapsulating all of these ideas and principles, so that and then of course you've got to hire the right people. But once they come in, how do we efficiently kind of transfer that feeling to people without having to, coach people through every single step of everything they're doing? Yeah.
Yeah, and you've done a masterful job of getting to meet, kind of Philip and Rex and Kate and some of the other teams, other folks behind the scene here. You've done a great job of assembling an incredibly strong team of folks that have bought into that delightful pursuit. And Brad, if you could share a little bit, especially when you have to deal with scientists and commercialization and this, kind of material science space. What were some of the most important early hires or early additions to the team? Maybe they weren't even employees, advisors, support systems, providers. Tell us a little bit about one of the more meaningful additions to the quote unquote team that you made in building Avadain.
Sure, but before I do that, I just wanted to say, Eric, I think we just had a glimpse into what it must have been like to sit in a room with Steve Jobs when Apple was being created, what we just heard from Seymour. And that was the thought that was going through my mind, was that must have been exactly what Jobs was trying to do with Apple. So, stay tuned and watch what all the great things MAGFAST is going to come out with.
I agree.
Um, so Oh, no, no, absolutely, Seymour. So for us, we hire the smallest number of people possible because we want to outsource whatever we possibly can. And so all of the legal is outsourced, all the patenting is outsourced, all of the engineering and research and development are outsourced. So our team is managing that process. And in that way, we can keep our overheads to the rock bottom and then assign cash to certain tasks so that we can keep the budget under control. So for us, bringing Panasonic on board was absolutely key right in the beginning. They're a 50-50 partner with my company, Bastille, as founders of Avadain. And of course, we then tap into their industrial network. We deal specifically with their intellectual property group, which is a huge group. So we get a lot of support from them, also in the licensing area and so forth. That was great. We were really fortunate to bring Henry Ford III on board as the chairman of the company. What Henry adds is that sort of manufacturing perspective that's really unique. He is absolutely a delight to work with. As chairman, I wind up speaking to him about every 2 weeks about the company status, giving him briefings, and he probes that. Our chief commercial officer, Phil Van Wormer, worked for DuPont for 17 years, introducing new chemical products and commercializing those. And of course, what we're doing is the end product may not be a chemical product, but it's produced by chemical companies. And so that's it. And then lastly, I would say our first manufacturing licensee has just joined the board of directors, Harcrest Chemicals, and they have this industry experience in advanced materials. So what we've tried to do very slowly and selectively was take each of the key components of the business and then bring those people onto the board and into the management of the company. And in that way, I think we've really assembled just an absolutely great team. And this year I'd like to grow that team And that's a never-ending process in and of itself, as you know from Net Capital. But that I hope that answers your question, Eric.
It does. I just wanted to make sure that there's some folks got some of their due as well. I love having the figureheads on the line here, but it takes a village, and you guys have been able to assemble a fantastic village around your businesses to grow here. And speaking of building a village, you too can join the family and join the village here. You can go directly to netcapital.com and you can invest in both MAGFAST and Avadain. You can review their offering pages, determine what your investment thresholds are, see if this fits your thesis, and you can participate for a meaningful ownership stake or for a modest one, whatever fits your budget. So right around the half mark, I want to make sure I got the shameless plug in there about potentially investing in these deals. Some great questions continue to come in here, and I think some of the most fun ones are talking about the unexpected part of these journeys. The uncertainty in the space of building something and being an entrepreneur is it's kind of, I think, unparalleled. And Seymour, I think you have really navigated uncertainty well, especially with distribution and supply chain and all sorts of things. I mean, a global pandemic, all those great things that people have endured. I'm going to start with you. Can you talk a little bit about, how every startup has journeys? What are some of the things that happened along the way that you never saw coming, but ended up shaping your company in a major way for the better? And I'd love to offer that up to you as well, Brad. So I'm going to give you a second to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the pandemic. I remember doing a presentation from this room. This is a little, we have like a green screen and lights and stuff here for doing presentations and live streams like this. And I remember doing one where I was showing this is what the Los Angeles Bay normally looks like showing how many container ships would normally be there. And this is what it looked like at 11 o'clock this morning. And the difference was like the difference between two ants crawling on your counter, normal in the case of the bay, mixing my analogies here, and just hundreds and hundreds of ships just complete. I mean, the supply chains were just absolutely kind of bonkers for a while. But so obviously that applied to everybody. I think something that surprised us, like, so how about this for a day one item? Entrepreneurs should know about this. The credit card industry, man, that is a that is a difficult industry. There are a lot of very bad actors in the industry. It has the kind of sheen, of the major brands, the kind of the Visa and the MasterCard and so on. But there are a lot of people in the kind of supply chain underneath that, and we ran into a problem on the very first day that we launched MAGFAST, which is, very touch and go. But we did one of the things where we invited, we had a list of people, we invited them along to a presentation. We kind of laid out the stall, said, this is our new idea. If you'd like to pre-order, go ahead. And we had, well, we've spoken of this before. The first 24 hours was a little under $650,000, which is pretty great. And then we got a phone call from, I want to mention their name. I so want to say their name out loud. From a very well-known credit card processing brand, and they were like, yeah, this all smells a bit fishy to us, because people so we were too successful for them. If those sales had simply dribbled in over a few months, everything would have been fine. And they held back a huge amount of the money. So we got this sort of success on our hands, and then only half of the money, and it's just unconscionable. And we've come across there's the part of the challenge being in business and being I think probably a business of any size, but you certainly maybe feel it more sharply as a small business, is that there's sometimes this sense that everybody else is going to get paid anyway, and we're gonna get it only. It's kind of like they get paid anyway, and we only get paid, by which I mean we're only successful when we get everything right. That isn't true, but it's a feeling that can often develop. And the way that we handle it is we only allow ourselves to kind of be down for a few hours at a time. So when something really bad happens, I'll just kind of sort of check out for a few hours. I'll go for a walk. I'll go to bed early. I'll do whatever it is, and then I just never let it go on for too much too much longer than that. I don't have any of my team members in the room. They probably say, no, 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 he's a bear for weeks at a time. But I don't think it's true. I think actually one of my better qualities and one of the qualities of our team is when we're never down for long, because I don't. I guess the purpose of this conversation is to toot our own horns a bit, isn't it? But I don't want to kind of toot too loud. But I genuinely think that the challenges that have happened over the years, some of which we created ourselves, but many of which were unreasonable and unexpected from outside, including some changes that are going on. You might have seen in the news over the last few days at the moment. But I mean, but there are things that have happened over the years that I believe would unquestionably have taken out many, if not most, teams. And I'm very proud of the way we kind of go, all right,
Yeah.
we get back up and we go forward. And very often we've managed to turn it into an opportunity. We found an upside. Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah, that resilience is impressive. And that's a kind of a prerequisite for a lot of smaller teams, especially. And I love that goldfish mentality. Athletes talk about next play mentality. You're gonna celebrate the wins for a little while and you get right back to practice. And same thing,
Yeah.
you're gonna learn from the bad plays and get right back in the game. So Brad, I'd love to open it up to you as well. Some experiences early on, plot twists, unexpected turns, how they ended up shaping the company in a major way and how you learned to overcome those.
Sure. Ours, I think I would flip that on its head because in the development and fundamental science of the process that we use to create graphene, which is called electrochemical exfoliation and expansion, you have like 99 failures before you get to one success. And so it's not that we had something unexpected happen. The unexpected was actually that it worked.
That's
Um,
success, yeah.
and that was really a great unexpected. And I always thought it would work because fundamentally I could see that the science was there, but finding the way to actually scale the production was immensely complicated and very frustrating and filled with the unexpected. What I always tell people is that that's great from a development perspective, because each time you hit an obstacle, that gives you something to file a patent on, right? Once you've overcome it.
All right. Yeah.
But once you have too many of those, you begin to lose the joy of having IP to file, and you just really want to get to the end. And so now we see the light at the end of the tunnel, that we're scaling. We're building our first reactor for Harcross Chemicals. We're getting ready to ship that in August. So now I'm feeling a bit relieved. But for us, the unexpected was that we got to this point.
I think that's a fantastic way to think about it. I think about what some of the things that our founder at Net Capital, Jason Frischman, will say sometimes is that the natural gravity of entrepreneurship is towards failure. It is actually overcoming that. That is the kind of the anomalous part of building a company. So I love the idea of, it's not so much, what twists and turns, that the surprising part is the success. And that is actually absolutely, I think, probably more broadly true across entrepreneurship than just in the material sciences or hard tech. You both spoke about team and culture. You've been able to bring incredible folks together, and they seem to really buy into your vision of how to grow the company. As a founder, you set the culture of your company. How do you approach leadership? What types of teams are you trying to build? If for somebody maybe who's on the line also considering investing, but maybe also working on their own project, can you talk a little bit about culture building and how impactful that could be on growing a successful business? And I'll kind of tee that up. Actually, let's come reverse order again, Brad. If you just want to keep going, and we'll come right back to you, Seymour.
Sure, absolutely, great. So my theory about building a team and management is find people who are really outstanding, who can fit into a general area, and then let them define their role. In other words, I don't want to spend the time trying to tell them what to do, because I think that's really limiting in the long term. Let them shine, let them grow into it, let them own that space, and then let them hire people around them to fill in the gaps. And so that's really the way we've tried to build this team is to find strong, confident people who we can let fill those roles. Now, if anybody's out there and is interested, the next step is to hire a chief technology officer, because we're splitting the role that Phil Van Wimmer has. He'll be doing much more of the marketing and commercial implementation. So a chief technology officer would be our next hire.
Well, I love that. We always ask, outside of investment, how can folks support you? And it sounds like that's one opportunity. So please spread the word, folks. If you know a talented technologist interested in joining a growing team, sounds like there's an opportunity there. Reach directly out to Brad. And if you can't do that, we'll point you in the right direction. That's really cool. Seymour, you are probably culture setter in chief. You shared some fantastic books with me that
Yeah,
I've been able to
I
read.
mean, I think the interesting thing about culture is the default is that I think it sort of will tend to be like the culture will tend to inherit your strengths and weaknesses, right? So I'm really proud of the fact that people are kind of cheerful and well motivated, and I mean, I met earlier today with our customer care folks, and it's kind of like that's a tough gig, kind of anyway, like answering tickets all day long, and we've been open about the mistakes we've made in the past, and a good number of the tickets that they deal with us, are still dealing with that today, and yet you hear them say, "Oh my goodness, I'd never work anywhere," or like this is the best place I've ever worked, which is kind of amazing. I think, but what I have to watch for is we can't have everybody having fun and being like everybody should have fun and be creative, but then we also need to get stuff done. So bringing the kind of clockwork discipline, it's the problem you were talking about earlier on, Brad, is that the scientists who do amazing things but never get anything done. So we always have to guard against that. And we're fortunate that we've now got a good number of sort of very experienced industry professionals who are better than we were in the past at at hitting our beats. The most important influence for me was I was about a decade ago, in 2014, so I guess it's 11 years ago now. I was invited to spend a week on Necker Island, which is Richard Branson, Virgin Atlantic, all the Virgin companies. It's his private island in the British Virgin Islands, and he was there for most of the week, and so we got to have most of our meals with him for most of the week. And there was even one morning when I was down early for breakfast, and it was like just me and Richard and one other person. I'm still getting goosebumps thinking about it now. And he was, first of all, he was exactly the way you think he is from everything you've seen, just kind of smart and funny, very humble. He would you'd be in a meeting and he was happy to ask like the dumb question that was actually everybody in the room wanted to ask, but thought they'd look too dumb if they asked it. But he was really interesting talking about culture. He was kind of like, you know what, there's just, if people are simply wrong, then very kindly let them go. But there's no point in being mean-spirited with anybody ever, and particularly not someone who you want to keep. That people know when they've made a mistake. They don't want to make the same mistake twice. And whilst that isn't a perfect governing philosophy, he's done okay with it. Yeah, he always says, if you're going to have a party, the boss should be the first one to jump into the pool. And I don't know if that's quite me, but attitudinally, I hope that people always know that they can come to me and sort of feel supported. We're kind of wherever they are in life's journey. Yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic sentiment.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing what you got to experience there that with others. I could take that with them. And now I'm really interested in getting you near a pool because I think I'm going to be able to bait you into getting in now.
Well, you'd be if we were there, you'd be the boss. So yeah.
Right, right. I was just going to say, Eric, after you.
Deal. I will definitely, I gladly. And that actually segues really well. We are on the line, and obviously you both have been able to raise capital incredibly successfully, not just grow a business and run the business well, but also be able to raise capital, which is an entirely separate full-time job. And both of you raised over $9 million just through the Net Capital platform, not even considering outside financing that you might have participated in. That's the really exciting part. And then you see online, I feel like it almost feels like companies are raising capital all the time, but that is selection bias for articles. The entrepreneurship journey is incredibly treacherous, But it feels like sometimes if you follow enough of the same threads, that every company just shows up one day, gets their $1 million check, and rides off into the sunset, which is not representative. But you've both been able to raise over $9 million through net capital. But I know that took some personal sacrifices. So I'd love to, if you're open to share a little bit about, what are some of the personal sacrifices you've had to make to get your company off the ground, had to change your relationships, maybe your lifestyle, mindset, maybe it's changed over time in a way that you haven't expected. So, Seymour, reverse order again. Can you start us off with a little bit of, we see the glamorous part of having millions of dollars raised, but can you tell a little bit about behind the scenes of some of the sacrifices it took to get here?
I mean, I don't think I have anything particularly enlightening to say here. I mean, there's just sort of, yeah, it's really time, isn't it? There's my younger daughter, we're looking at colleges now, and I'm not on all of the college visits. I'm on some of them because I'm not a completely delinquent parent, but I'm not on all of them. I've been to almost all the recitals, but not all of the recitals. And there've been too many weekends when something or other's been going on. I'm like, no, I gotta be working. So I think it's just the kind of those kind of classic sacrifices. I've been extremely fortunate with the support that I've had from my family. There has been essentially sort of zero resentment that I'm working on this thing, and 100% support, which not everybody gets, and it's been phenomenal. And the other thing is, I don't know how much of a sacrifice it is because I really don't know what else I would do. I mean, I'm fully qualified to stack the shelves at the local supermarket. I know that I could do that, but I wouldn't know because in my day, it's like 1 minute we're discussing manufacturing, the next minute we're looking at advertising, the next minute we're trying to figure out how to incorporate AI, the next minute we're talking about, how do we make this, that, or the other personnel improvement. We don't seem to have problems with personnel, and it's so varied. I wouldn't I wouldn't know where to take it. I couldn't apply for the job as chief technology officer someplace or other, even though I know a lot more about technology than 999,000 people. So.
No, I love that. The everyday in and out sacrifices that maybe add up, you accumulate,
Sure.
but you do notice those for sure, and love having the strong support system around you and the family supporting you through it. Brad, I'd love to same question. Some of the personal sacrifices early on, besides having to just deal with the scientists on a regular
I would
basis.
just, I mean, before we started, Brad had a full head of hair, and I had a full head of dark hair. So that's, there are inevitable physical changes that come with it as well, right, Brad?
Absolutely. I wasn't going to mention
Yeah,
that. No, for me, I think, Eric, I was just reflecting on this the other day, I realized that there are friends I haven't spoken to in a year or two or three.
yeah.
And one of my good friends texted me and said, how is Avadain going? And I said, it's going really great. Thanks for asking. We're doing all these great things. We're shipping a plant, getting ready for more manufacturers. And he said, it's been 3 years since you spoke to me last. And I said, no, it couldn't have been. That's really for me what the sacrifice has been, because I really just have let all of my dear friends go by the wayside. Not because I did so intentionally, but because, as Seymour was saying, I'm just so focused every day on all the things we're doing and that we should be doing and that we should anticipate, that that's just what happened. Like Seymour, I'm trying to have my twin 16-year-old daughters have a very good high school experience and try to do things with them and let my wife know that I care about her and we, spend time together and so forth. But really what makes it work for me is that we have this incredible support from our investors. You know, I'm sure some of them are on this call today, and I just want to thank them all, because
Yes, yeah, yeah.
their support has made this possible. And they're providing that fuel that allows me to focus and then forget about my friends. So it's their fault, not my fault. But
Yes.
Never mind.
No,
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
that's
that's an unusual investment thesis. Blame the investors. Yeah. Well done, Brad. No,
yeah,
I want to
please.
sort of triple underline what you just said. I mean, we just couldn't be more grateful to the people who have supported us over all of this time. Pre-order customers, and investors alike. In many cases, they're the same people, of course, people who are early customers. Um, and yeah, you're incredible, and we're working hard. I've been saying it for a while. We're working to make you proud. I think with the new products and the new team, the new very like we're working directly with the factory. Previously, you spoke about outsourcing, and outsourcing is both this wonderful and magical thing, and it can also be very problematic if you don't manage it properly. Brad, I think, has a very good grip on it, has always. We have now, but we were previously going through like too many, like we were talking to A, who was talking to B, who was talking to C, and the message was never really getting to D, and that was taking a long time, and the work wasn't good enough. And I've said this publicly many times before. I own that. I made the mistake. I made the original choice, but it cost us a lot of time and money. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it sounds like some follicles as well. So we age like presidents as entrepreneurs. That's just part of the process. And it sounds like if you're a friend of Brad's and you haven't heard from him in a couple of years, you can just email help@netcapital.com. And that sounds like the best way to get a hold of him.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing it's an investor relations issue. Actually, no,
Yeah.
no, I joke. It can be, but I do love some of the things you mentioned. Entrepreneurship can be an incredibly lonely journey, but it sounds like you guys have been able to design it into your lives in a way that it feels like you're getting support from your teams and from your investors, from your customers, from your supporters, and your loved ones in a way that helps, kind of make it feel less isolating because it can be. And I think that's a really important message to potential entrepreneurs on the line here.
Yeah.
I want to get to a couple more questions. Before I do, we turned off the chat feature, I realized, so I haven't been able to add a link to the offering pages here, but I do want to remind you, both you, everybody on the line, hundreds of you, which is super exciting, can go on to netcapital.com, search MAGFAST and Avadain. You can go directly to their links at netcapital.com/companies/MAGFAST or netcapital.com/companies/Avadain. And you can go directly to the link there. But I wanted to make sure I didn't forget about you folks. We just don't have the chat on because there's so many of you in here right now. But I want to make sure you can get to the link so you can review the opportunity and you too can invest and join the family here. Let's sneak in a couple more questions here. We talked a lot about what you've overcome. We talked about some of the learning, some of the culture settings, some of the great things that other folks can build into their lives. But let's fast forward for a moment. Let's think 10 years into the future, maybe. What impact do you hope your company has on the world, on your industry, or even just the people that use your product? But what would be your goal impact here? And I think if I go in reverse order, I'm starting with you here, Seymour.
Look, these mobile devices aren't going away, and data and charging are a very important part of the infrastructure. So while the product that I've mentioned today and showed you here is actually in some ways very, very simple, it's a beautiful, powerful, delightful, heavyweight home charger. Our vision is for fast charging everywhere, which means a combination of consumer products and then also kind of public products as well. But we see something kind of deeper beyond that, which is not just charging, which is a need that is not going away. I mean, there's how many billion people on the planet are there now? And I read somewhere that 60% of smartphone owners either run out of power or are acutely worried about running out of power every week. So there's always going to be this need for charging. But we think that there are all kinds of other things that can be done with this sort of the moment of charging is also a kind of moment of connection for the device, and it would take longer than we have here to articulate it properly. But we think that there are ways that the presence of the device, proven through this charging connection that's actually much more than a charging connection, can actually enable all kinds of other possibilities and services beyond that, including stuff to do with AI and security and many other things as well. So Brad and this very sort of exquisite pure kind of graphene has has this a sort of bigger potential than us to kind of change the world. I think we have potential to sort of to change a part of your life, which is the sort of the kind of connected part of your life, and make it easier and more delightful, and maybe ultimately, how can I put it? Have you ever snapped at your spouse when you've been dealing with some technology and it's been making you crazy? And so I think if we're contributing to the side of the ledger, which is the things you're using are delightful and easier, maybe that makes a little contribution to the way people are towards each other.
Yeah, it's a feel life is a feeling experience, and being positive and being delightful, having delightful experiences certainly helps. And then I want to add on there, the connected experience is certainly a growing and significant part of the experience. So definitely agree with that there. Same question to you, Brad, and I want to allow you to dig in here. Let's talk a little bit about where you see the future and the impact can be.
Sure. Well, to me, graphene is within 5 to 10 years, it's going to touch the life of every person in the United States and maybe the entire world every day. And I don't know if you remember in the 90s when every company was slapping .com onto the end of its name, because that was like something that was like really a big deal. Well, actually, graphene is really a big deal. What it can do is have aircraft bodies that are 30% lighter yet stronger. What we can do is make batteries charge in minutes for electric vehicles instead of hours. Give warfighters flexible, light body armor that's much stronger than anything they've experienced. So what graphene does is it allows the next generation of products in 45 industries, according to the Graphene Council. And so what we want to do is to bring that material to the world by licensing it to chemical companies who then manufacture it in the tons and hundreds of tons and thousands of tons. And so for us, filtering water to make seawater into fresh water, that's one of the visions for graphene. The ability to, with low quality graphene, to have roads that are flexible and don't develop potholes nearly as much as they currently do. And when you fill in the potholes, they stay filled because the graphene helps it to adhere to the surface that already exists. So for us, it's really a transformative thing. It's like what silicon was in the 80s, enabling semiconductors and processors to be built. So really, for us, the entire world can change with graphene, and really just everything can be made better, cleaner. The world can be made healthier and certainly more prosperous.
That's fantastic. No, I appreciate that so much. And I do want to make sure I sneak in one more question here because it is so temporally relevant. And I think, Seymour, you started mentioning it, but Brad, can you talk a little bit about the kind of tariff impact and the way that you source and the way you develop your high quality graphene? Can you talk a little bit, Brad, about what the current circumstances, without obviously getting hyper political here, how the tariffs might impact your business, Brad?
Well, I've been in Washington lately, and it seems that we align with the top priorities of the Trump administration. First, onshoring and revitalizing American manufacturing. New factories are being built. I listened to a press conference today from the White House, and they said $6 trillion has been committed to building new manufacturing. Now, whether or not that number is true is irrelevant. The point is, it's a huge amount. And as people build new factories, what we are trying to do is get graphene built into the production line of those new factories, because the hardest thing in the world is to have a factory that's operating and then tell the manufacturer they have to bring it down, re-engineer it, and add our material. That's a very, very big ask. But when we're talking about bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the US, we can eliminate the heat that's generated by semiconductors, particularly in AI data centers. That's one thing.
Huge. I was just saying
Absolutely
that's
huge.
huge. That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of energy usage, graphene is a nearly, the energy sector is obviously a big priority for the country and the administration. Graphene is a nearly perfect electrical conductor, unlike copper. When you put electricity through copper, it heats up, and that's because there's resistance, and the electricity is lost to resistance. And there's a lot of that that happens. With graphene, you wouldn't have that. And as AI data centers are being built, more power is being used to cool them than for computing. Well,
Mhm.
that happens because of the resistance of the connections between the semiconductors, which are copper or silver. If we substitute graphene, we can eliminate that resistance and therefore the heat. So the data center can run cooler. The electricity can be used primarily for computing, which it should be, right? You'd think that's what the priority should be. And it's a material that we can make endless amounts of. So I know time is getting short here, Eric, but we align very, very well with the administration's new priorities.
No, I think that was critically important, and folks seem to be willing to stick on for a couple more minutes. I promise we'll start wrapping up here shortly. But it sounds like, semiconductor application, data centers for AI application, and one more incredibly important application. Seymour, I think you might have it in your hand. I think the MAGFAST Lux cables also incorporate graphene there. So I
Yeah,
think we have at least
these don't yet have Brad's graphene in them, but we want to get it in there as soon as we can. But it's just an example of yet another. I mean, who would have thought that a cable, a super premium charging cable would have it?
delightful, if I may
But
say
it's
myself.
actually but there's a mix of graphene and actually Teflon in here that enables this incredible we the sort of the way that it behaves with this dancing move because all of the elements can slip and slide against each other inside, and we have a um, a sort of a draft, I want to call it a draft agreement, an agreement, a sort of gentleman's agreement, probably not a very fashionable expression these, a people's agreement with Brad that we're just going to look and see are there ways that we can cooperate together. We would certainly like to bring all of the benefits of graphene into our products as rapidly as supply chain and those kinds of things make possible.
And
Yeah,
we wanted to help MagFast and work with them and support them to continue to be the leader in their field.
love that. Look at the synergy, all off to the races with a couple of issuers working together. One of my favorite things. As we transition, last question, I'm gonna sneak in here. But I do love, thanks for adding that, Seymour, that before you even knew Brad, you loved graphene, which is super cool. But bringing it home here, I have to ask, I love that you guys are willing to do this. Why was it important for you to raise capital through net capital? You talked about, building and the support system you get from your investors, but I'm always so grateful when incredibly talented founders like yourselves with promising technologies allow the everyday person to participate in these deals and invest and grow with you. So maybe I think reverse order would start with you here, Brad. Can you talk a little bit about why it was important to raise capital with us and allow all the people on the line right now, incredible numbers of attendees, to be able to own a small piece of your company?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things right at the beginning that I really felt was important was trying to democratize graphene. We're licensing it to chemical companies so that they can manufacture it. Harcross is our first licensee. We'll have others hopefully by the end of this year, certainly next year. That democratizes graphene so that we're not really controlling it. We're giving out the technology in exchange for a royalty, which we're very happy about, but other people who have that expertise can do it. And so on the other side of the equation, we experimented, for sure. The first time we did it, we had no idea what the result would be. But we really wanted to democratize graphene to investors, right? Because that in and of itself creates a network of people who connect us to customers, end users, licensees. And that was the ecosystem we were trying to create. So it was a big, big leap of faith for us. Fortunately, it worked out very well, and the rest has been history. But that's really what drove us first to crowdfunding internet capital.
Democratized access at your core already, and why not apply it here? I love that. Same question to you, Seymour, to bring us home.
Our route to Net Capital was we'd had some the sort of same team in a previous incarnation had some success on Indiegogo. So that's not investment crowdfunding. It's called rewards crowdfunding. And then we had so we had tens of thousands of folks kind of either who were customers or pre-order customers or who were following us. And we're like, look, we need to raise investment capital. Why wouldn't we do this with the folks who we know and who know us? And I think also there's this sense of if something great is going to happen here, shouldn't the people who've been looking after us get to participate in it? The way we got to Net Capital was we met with all of the key players in the industry, and you guys were delightful, and your competitors were not. That is the quickest way of summarizing it. And it's as an entrepreneur, there's actually research, I think, from Harvard or something like this, that like 70% of decisions are wrong. And so part of the trick as a leader is to identify when they're wrong and change them quickly. The Net Capital decision was absolutely right, and I've never had a moment's kind of regret or hesitation around it. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. You've gone above and beyond. A year ago we had a particularly challenging time. You were one of the first calls that we made, saying things are challenging at the moment, and immediately you kind of embraced us, put us in touch with people who could help and so on, and it's been amazing. Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful to be a small piece of this journey. And as always, I just get to be on the line with you folks. It's a pleasure to moderate, but we have an incredible team, members behind the scenes, and you've met a bunch of them. So definitely want to give a shout out to, all of the folks that you've worked with behind the scenes from the ops.
Can I just do one quick shout out here?
Please, Seymour, yeah.
I don't know whether he's watching now, but I know of at least one mutual investor. I probably shouldn't say his full name, should I? But Philip B, you know who you are. He sent me an email the other day, and he said, "I'm so excited that my two favorite companies are coming together." So if you'd like to join Philip B, if you're an Avadain investor, we'd love it if you joined the party here at MAGFAST. And the folks who've been supporting us at MAGFAST, please do take a look at what Brad and his team are doing. We're both early stage companies. There are risks involved in both, but I think you've heard in the last hour the stuff they're working on is huge, and they're the real deal.
And there's another one, Dave McDowell. I don't think he would mind me saying so. Who's a mutual investor.
Thank you, sir.
I love that. I love that overlap. Yeah. Definitely. That's a perfect way to segue here. I saw some great questions starting to sneak in at the end here. We're already 8 minutes over. We kept over 100 of you here this long. So I have to say, if you asked a question that we didn't get to, feel free to go to the discussion board built into the offering page there. These folks are incredibly responsive. If you still need help, there's help@netcapital.com. Our investor relations team is incredible. They'd be happy to point you in the right direction as well. So love the folks that have overlapped and invested in both deals. Thank you so much for all the attendees on the line here. Remember, you can go to netcapital.com, and after reviewing the offering page, deciding what your investment profile is, you too can invest and own a piece of each of these companies. So go ahead and check them out. And I just want to thank you so much. I love getting to hear your guys' stories, get to support your growth journey. Everything that we do at Net Capital is exactly to see fantastic founders and entrepreneurs like yourselves building great companies. So Seymour and Brad, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for letting me hang out with you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Great seeing you, Seymour. And thank you so much, Eric.
And you, Brad. Thanks for pulling it all together, Eric. Thank you. And thank you to everyone at Net Capital. You're incredible.
Thank you. Appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the evening, everybody. Bye now.
Bye now.